Acknowledge the land on which we are gathered for this meeting. For thousands of years, this land has been the home of the Patwin people, including the Yocha Dehe Winte Nation today. The Patwin people have remained committed to the stewardship of this land over many centuries. It has been cherished and protected as elders have instructed the young through generations. We are honored and grateful to be gathered here today on their traditional lands. And I'm going to pass the talk to Mike to introduce Teresa.
Yeah, thank you, Joan. Well, welcome everybody. Looks like we've got a little bit of cool weather today, so glad you're here, and we'll hope the cool weather continues. Looks like it will for a while. Today we have Teresa Lavell, who's a master gardener for Solano County, or in Solano County, who's going to talk about sustainable gardening, which is an important topic and broad topic and something we all ought to continue to learn about. And I'll let Teresa talk a little bit more about her background before she gets started. But let me just say, because I usually forget, that next Thursday, on October 24th, our next session, Peggy Smith, who, if you haven't heard Peggy talk before, you definitely want to try to make this one, is going to talk about the development of the Central Garden in Davis. So from weeds to wonderful is the topic of her talk. And then for the last session, November 14th, Mary Ellen McKenzie is going to talk about roses, and in particular, fragrant roses and the difference of fragrance in roses. So kind of a deep dive into roses. So that'll be, for those of you who like roses, certainly, or even if not, it's going to be pretty interesting. And that will be the last session for this year. And we intend to start up again in January, but we take December off, as you know. And the last thing I wanted to mention, just kind of a calendar reminder, is if you're thinking about planting a winter garden, winter vegetable garden, or even annual flowers, now is probably the time to do it. Most years you could have done it a little earlier, but with this heat, it probably, if you did do it earlier and you were able to keep them alive, good for you. But otherwise, now would be a good time. It looks like we're going to be in a stretch of cooler weather. And it's also a time to start for perennials, or those you could go clearly into November. But you probably could start now. So certainly if you're thinking about putting in some new perennials, now is a good time to start thinking about it, at least. And with that, Teresa, it's all yours.
Thanks, Mike. So I noticed several familiar names in the on the different windows here, and so forgive me for introducing myself to old friends. But my name is Teresa Lavell. I'm a Solano County Master Gardener and have been since 2003. During that time, I went to the Sonoma State College for their sustainability program. And then I also worked in sustainability with the IPM Advocate program. And for those of you who are not familiar with that, it's closely associated with the Our Water, Our World program. And we go into the different stores and try and affect change at the point of purchase by encouraging people to try the less toxic products that are on the shelves. But through that, I've gained a great passion for sustainability issues, and I'm happy to share them with you now. Though I was mentioning to Mike and Joan that back in the day when we first started working with this in the Solano County Master Gardener program, back in about 2008, a lot of it was kind of cutting edge information. It is not that anymore. A lot of this is really basic, and I acknowledge that there's a lot of wisdom in the Zoom room. So I'm hopeful that we can use this presentation as a starting point, but also share what works for you. So with that, let me go ahead and share my screen. And that should be up now. And everybody see that? Thank you. Okay, so steps towards building a healthy and resilient garden. oftentimes we need to start with a common understanding of what that means. What is a sustainable garden? What is sustainable gardening? I had a professor at one point who talked about sustainable as kind of a low bar. He said, if somebody asked you, how is your marriage? And you said it was sustainable, people would worry about you. So it's just kind of a funny way to start with sustainable gardening. What does that mean to you? So just so that we're on the same page, I've thrown up just a little bit of a definition. And that the key point is that it involves working with nature, not against it. So if we keep that as kind of the focus, we can let nature direct our behavior and our choices. So just as a framework for the talk, I'm going to look over the 7 steps of sustainability. This is adapted from the bay-friendly or river-friendly organizations, depending on which watershed you're part of. But that's just the framework for looking at it. And though the little graphic shows these wonderful little wedges of pie, understand that none of these can be teased out independently. They are all connected. When you're working on one, you're affecting another. So it's even if you focus on just one wedge, know that your efforts are affecting other parts of this graphic. So does anybody have any questions about the source of the material or anything like that before I go dive into it? Good deal.
No questions.
Very good. So this is pretty basic. Landscape for your climate. Use what is going to thrive in your area. If you are attempting to grow something outside of the heat, the water, the sunlight that we have in this area, there's nothing against that. Just know that the resources needed for that plant to thrive are going to increase. Whether you're talking about the added water. I see the hydrangeas behind you, Joan, and I think of my neighbor who has hydrangeas out in their front yard. And every summer, the shade structure goes up in front of them. There's nothing wrong with that. You just need to accept that if you choose plants outside of our climate, the resources that you're going to need to help them thrive are going to go up. Let's move on from that. A landscape for less to the landfill. This is pretty simple stuff. Plants that match the space they're in. If you have a small yard, you're not going to want to put in a ceanothus that goes to 25 feet when you only have a 3-foot border. It's pretty simple. You reduce the pruning, you reduce the stuff that you throw in your green bin and take to the landfill. Not only is that reducing the energy for composting and so on in a communal space, but it's reducing the number of times the truck is coming through. So it's really sort of simple stuff. Grass cycle when you can. This is really good for those who still have lawns. I know there's been a grand push away from lawns, but they do have their benefits. So if you are one of the ones that still have it, wonderful. This is one way to reduce some of the waste that can be produced from a lawn is by grass cycling. Do we have any composters in the group by any chance? I do a very passive composting. In fact, passive is the key to most of my gardening. If there is a lazy way of doing it, that's what I'm going to choose. So compost on site, that can be as simple as having a corner of your yard where you throw things, preferably garden produce and cuttings and so on, not anything non-gardening related. But it reduced water and fertilizer when you have this this planting that matches the space you're in, and salvage and recycle what you can from those. I love to show this picture as an example of less to the landfill. So real quick, does anybody recognize that yellow flower up front, the one right below the square photinias? Anybody throw that in the chat? Just to give you a hint, this is it. This is a Lady Banks rose. The largest rose in New Mexico is a Lady Banks rose. The largest rose in the US is a Lady Banks rose in New Mexico. I believe is 5,000 square feet. So the idea that you're going to have these little pom-pom plants, right off the bat, you have solidified the need for extreme landscaping to fit that space. And if you can see in the lower picture, the water runoff as a result of this. So they've cleaned the dirt so that so it's compacted, the water is running off. There's no organic matter adding to the soil there. So they have created some situations for these plants that are going to stress it beyond its natural growing pattern, and it's going to require more investment of time and resources simply because you have put a plant that is this beautiful cascading fountain of flowers into a position that it doesn't fit. And it just comes down to plant choice. This, by the way, is the same property. The difference is, as you can see, this is easily accessible. This was on about a 10-foot embankment in the back, which was very difficult to reach. So the next, the idea of nurturing the soil. Back to that plant under that Lady Banks rose, as I said, they've cleaned the soil of any debris. I read a research article just the other day that talks about the carbon sequestration power of leaves. Don't rake your leaves, that they lying on the soil. So let me back up. Soil that has been left with the leaf cover on top of it has a higher percentage of carbon sequestration than the bare soil. So just by nurture, you can nurture the soil by doing nothing. Leave those leaves in place and let them feed the soil. So that also helps protect the soil from compaction and erosion. Mulch, of course, can be an added thing. You don't have to just wait for leaves to drop, but that will help feed the soil naturally. There's a saying that is fairly common amongst gardeners: feed the soil and the soil will feed the plant. But you'd want to avoid the synthetic quick release fertilizers, which are often high in salts and can kill some of the biology going on in the soil. So it's a little counterproductive, and you want to avoid those synthetics. And then, of course, minimize the use of chemical pesticides, which can get into the soil and cause damage for quite some time. Depending on the type you use, it will take a fair amount of time for those to leach out of the soil and that natural biology to return. So quick talk about the pesticides, synthetic versus organic. There's a wonderful book called Teeming with Microbes that talks about the difference between the two. That again, that in the synthetics, you'll often have both added salts and high nitrogen. In very, very broad strokes, when you see those numbers, the first number is for foliage. The second number is for flowers and fruit, and the third number is for the overall health of the plant. So if you see something like this that is high in nitrogen, you know that that's not something that you're going to want to put on, say, for instance, your fruit trees, that you are trying to produce a good fruit. This is going to give you heavy foliage and not as much emphasis on the fruit. But the synthetic portion is what pushes that number over. A healthier number would be below 10. That would be the healthy meal in terms of nitrogen. When you see it in this high of a number, you know that it's synthetic. Actually, there are some natural manures and so on that will have that high number. But regardless, you want to keep that number down lower than, say, about 10, because that is going to allow the plant to have a more natural growth pattern. So this is a real, obviously, large drawing of a cell. And what happens when you have the high nitrogen cell, those cell walls expand with this unnatural growth. It's a high sugar content inside that cell. And if you've ever tried to pop an underinflated balloon, and then the opposite, try not to pop an overinflated balloon, it's very hard on both. Overinflated balloons are very easy to pop, regardless of the usage. And the same thing goes with these plant cells. If they are overproduced with sugars from that high nitrogen, they're going to act like those balloons and overinflate. And then you've got a little critter like this coming in. And we often talk in the gardening world about the different mouthpieces on insects and what damage they do. This is the classic piercing, sucking mouthpiece. So if this is just a plant bug, that's kind of the common name for it, which somebody must have been having an off day, because plant bug's kind of a generic. But anyway, the plant bug has this piercing, sucking mouthpiece, and it's only about 1/4 of an inch long. And so it's going to find those overinflated cells, and there is they are attracted to that. So this is that high nitrogen fertilizer is going to push the plant into this hyperdrive and bring in all of these bugs that are saying that that's their favorite meal. And with that little mouthpiece, you can see the damage that they will cause. So that's kind of a broad approach to fertilizers. Are there any thoughts anybody want to bring up about fertilizers or how they use them? Or do we have any questions, Joan?
You have one question. Please explain grass cycling.
Oh, so grass cycling, where was it? Grass cycling. Anyway, we don't need to go back. Is when you are, when you mow your lawn, but you leave the cuttings in place. And so typically when you're mowing your lawn, you're not going to take more than 1/3 of the blade off at any given time. And that leaves a significant amount of growth on the plant so that the roots are shaded. If you leave the grass clippings on there, and typically these days most lawn mowers have that opportunity to cut the blades a couple times, so you're not going to have clumps of grass, but you're going to leave those cuttings on top of the lawn, and you're going to reap the benefit. Grass cycling will add nutrients to the soil as well as bring back some water, so that once they're drying out and decomposing, it's to the benefit of the plant. So that's what grass cycling is. And if that didn't clarify, please let me know. So, any other questions? Okay. So the next is conserve water, and we're Californians. We know this. We know to conserve water. It's kind of in our DNA these days. Ways to do that, of course, is mulch. 3 to 4 inches is going to save an incredible amount of water. Minimize your turf. Hydrozone. Hydrozone is for when you are a real fan of something like hydrangeas. Hydrangeas are known for needing extra water. My home here, we have 2. My mother is a big fan, and so we've got 2 hydrangea plants, but they're close together, relatively speaking, and they're on the same zone so that we can water the high needs plants in a high needs fashion, whereas the rest of our yard, which is more natives and low water plants, they are on a different zone, and so we can meet their needs with less water. Rain collection is huge. I'm not great with math, so I'm not going to go into what sort of quantities you can save. But suffice it to say that with the rain that we get, even when we are in a low rain year, we have more of a storage problem than a rain problem. If we could collect what comes down and save it for when we need it, we would have more than what we need. Unfortunately, the size of container needed for such as that is probably the size of our homes, but you can adapt that by, instead of having a container that collects the water, have bioswales or specific rain gardens set up so that when it comes down, it's not running straight to the drain. It's our permitting process kind of requires that rainwater is diverted away from the homes that we build, which is good for the homes, but it's also diverting it straight to the gutters, which goes straight out to the bay or whatever watershed that you might be in. And so if we can take the time to slow it, spread it, sink it, as Brad Lancaster is the kind of the water guru. If you ever have interest in rain catchment, look up Brad Lancaster. He has an incredible book out that is very detailed on how to take advantage of that. But simple things like making berms in your yard where you see rain running away, and you just slow it down and let it sink into the water or into the soil. And the benefit from that is that the surface tension of the water, even though you can't see it, there can be similar to when you get a drop of water on your finger. There's that drop of water under the soil, and it stays in that area for longer than you would think, and then goes into deep percolation, or if it's warm, evaporation. Manage your irrigation is huge. And I just found, we got a new puppy. And so I was up getting the puppy out for a water early in the morning when my irrigation was going off. And I found a fountain that I did not know was happening. So it is important, especially during when we've got those irrigation zones going off in the early morning, which again is the best. I know there are some people that prefer it in the evening, but just a quick side note, if most plants or most problems, biological problems like fungus or so on, will have a certain amount of hours that they need to be wet. And if you put your sprinklers on in the evening, that water will stay there overnight, extending the time that that plant is wet and making your plant more susceptible. So the ideal time to water your plants is early morning. And because then, of course, the sun comes up and you're going to start drying things out very quickly. So manage your irrigation and turn it on, unlike me, turn it on during the day sometime and see how it's going throughout the season so that you have a good feel for, is it doing what I think it's doing, or is it going rogue? So this is a statistic for statewide water use. 19% of our electricity goes to water-related uses. So down in the middle of that side note, you can see 28% of that is household residential use. Anything that you can do to reduce your water usage is also impacting energy use. So just back to those pie wedges at the beginning, every one affects another one. So the more you can save on water, the more you can save on statewide electricity use and your use. And that gets us to conserving energy. This is kind of basic stuff. Planting trees to minimize energy use, shade your paved areas, shade your air conditioners. This is common sense stuff. But it's one of the steps, so I'm throwing it in there. So we've got a lot of wisdom here. So if you come up with some ideas on these, the whole group of us will benefit from them. Please share. And then protect the water and air quality. This is I was had the pleasure of going to France recently, and we saw this in a parking lot and on beyond, that the parking lot itself was permeable. And anytime that you can allow that water to go into the soil, soil has chemical, biological, and physical properties that help cleanse the water. So if the water just runs off, it's taking all the heavy metals from our cars, from everyday living, and washing those into our waterways. If you can allow them to go through the soil, it's going to have that opportunity to cleanse the water and let it do the deep percolation. So again, that comes back to this prevent runoff. So when you can, just divert it into the soil and you get that benefit of cleansing. The proper equipment. This is getting big, and some neighborhoods are getting a little bit more legalistic with some gas-powered equipment. So I don't know what the future holds, but I know that there is some anxiety growing over gas-powered blowers, gas-powered mowers. These things are really pollution machines. So there are some neighborhoods, some homeowners associations that are starting to ban them. But the truth is, if you need them, you need them. Just keep them in proper working order so that they are not the hazard that some people see them to be. So with it's kind of a giveaway, but what is the #1 source of water pollution in California? It's not the big pipes that we associated with water pollution back in the 70s or something, and large industrial plants are not the problem, or oil tanker spills. And don't get me wrong, they add to it, but the #1 is runoff. We have a hand in that. We have an opportunity to make a change in that. And so when you are throwing out fertilizer, for instance, make sure that it's not on hard surfaces. Make sure that whatever you're doing is where you intended it to be. Make sure it goes into the plant bed and has that opportunity to be in the soil and have the filtration that we need. And the last of the steps is create and protect wildlife habitat. I know, as most of us are master gardeners, or certainly gardeners in general, we've all had those funny stories, and I was at an event one time when somebody complained about caterpillars eating their butterfly gardens. And so it's more than just creating that environment. It's a matter of tolerating some of the damage that goes with it when we do invite those wildlife critters into our gardens. And if you don't tolerate a little bit of damage like this one, of course, you're not going to have the adult monarch, because that's what caterpillars do. They eat the plants and then they evolve into these beautiful butterflies. And I am as guilty as anybody. When I first saw this in my garden, I thought I had some strange fungus going. And so I was looking into fungicides and waiting to see what my gardener friends would recommend to kill whatever this problem was turning out to be. Fortunately, I had some very wise friends who said that is nothing but the eggs to the green lacewing. So as most of you know, the adult is a great pollinator, but the nymph stage is a great excavator right through those aphid populations. So it's known as an aphid lion that coming through and is a voracious eater. So had I acted upon my initial gut reaction to those little what I thought were spores, I would have killed this wonderful friend. So those are the 7 steps. And then, of course, when you layer IPM on top of all of that, you are benefiting all those wedges, all that garden. So kind of hard to shout out, but if anybody is not familiar with IPM, I can stop and do a little talk about that. But if everybody is comfortable with integrated pest management, I'll continue on. Anything, Joan?
Yes, you did have a question.
Lovely.
Mike let us know that Teaming with Microbes, the book was written by Jeff Loisfeld and Wayne Lewis, published in 2006.
Yes.
And then there's a comment and a question. The mulch tree companies bring us scrappy, full of leaves and debris. Is that good for mulch? I thought leaves used a great deal of nitrogen to break down. Do they?
Yes and no, and to both of those. It's good to know where the source of the mulch. Oftentimes what is coming can be problematic for your yard. And so it's good to know ahead of time where it's coming from. If it's a reputable company, they're not going to send diseased trees and other problems into other people's homes, because you can spread problems that way. So know your source. Ask them, where did it come from? What is the was there a problem with any of the trees that were taken out to produce the mulch, and so on? As far as the nitrogen is concerned, it does use some, and nitrogen is highly mobile in the soil. And so sometimes when you're talking about nitrogen being sapped into that mulching process, people get very concerned about, well, what do they have to add? And unless it is, well, even that, I was going to say, unless it's a fruit producing tree, but you don't really want to use mulch, leaf mulch under that. I use leaf mulch under my native plants, my ornamentals that I'm not, that are not being pampered. I do not use it under fruit trees or in beds that I am growing vegetables or something like that. So I think it's a judicious moment that where do you use it? Where do you allow it to stand? If you're concerned about where it's going, I would pile it up in a far corner and let it be. A lot of overwintering friends can be in there, but a lot of overwintering problems. So it's a situational matter. So maybe if whoever asked it, if you want to give a few more details, or if that's enough information, it all comes down to it depends. So I hate to be vague, but that's kind of where we have to be with it.
That's it.
Okay. All right. So again, what is IPM? And this is an opportunity to focus on prevention of pests and their damage. And it is science-based, ecosystem-based, and it reduces risk to people and the environment. It's the long-term picture. This is, we as gardeners, we're seldom about what am I producing today? It's usually the season, the year, the decade, what is my long-term goal? Well, that is what IPM is. And that doesn't mean that you wait a decade to solve a problem, but it is keeping the long term in mind. So this is kind of the hierarchy of IPM. You start with identifying and monitoring the problem. If a pest has been a problem in the past, you want to look for it in the growing season. Is it a problem now? If it is there a cultural control, such as watering? If you are overhead watering, maybe you take it to a drip system. Is there a physical control? Can you block the pest from entering where the plant is? And then biological control. And that doesn't mean you need to go down and buy ladybugs, but plants that are going to bring in some of the beneficial bugs. And lastly, chemical control. That's not to say that you don't ever use chemicals. It's just that they are the last resort. But I have to emphasize that identification and monitoring. One day when I was working in one of my, in my role as an IPM advocate in one of the big box stores, I was in the chemical aisle, putting up some information on the less toxic products. And I heard a customer complain to staff that they had yellow spots in their lawn. And the staff's response was, "I know what you need." And my thought at the time was, I would need to ask a few questions. I've been doing this a while, but I would need to know, do you have a dog? Do you, what is the source of those yellow spots? There are so many things that could cause it. If you apply fertilizer, but it's a fungus problem, then you're not going to solve it. If it's a neighbor throwing things over the fence, you can throw whatever you want on the lawn. It's not going to solve it. So identification is absolutely key. And gardeners, the casual gardener, not long-term master gardeners by any stretch, but some casual gardeners can be in the garden, see damage, see a pest, or see an insect, and associate the two. But we have to remember correlation is not causation in the garden. And so it's important that you identify what it is that's going on with the plant before treating it. Now, there has been a movement of late to extend IPM into SPM, so sustainable pest management. And this includes these sustainability pillars that, in addition to these identification controls, cultural controls, physical controls, takes into consideration the effects of human health and social equity, the environmental protections, and economic viability. So what are the considerations regarding what does it do to the neighborhood? What does it do to the community? What does it do to the waterways? So these are, this is a growing change. So you're going to start hearing this more. Instead of IPM, it'll be SPM. And again, that takes into account these other considerations. Are there any questions about that? Because that's a lot of verbiage for the idea of looking to the long game.
You have a question. The question is, the overgrown lavender killed all my mint. Should I take them out because I need mint in my garden for my recipes?
Um, uh, it mint is difficult to kill. And so I would say if you prune back the lavender, the mint that is probably hibernating under there will take off. Mint is one of those things that grows by underground rhizomes, and very small portions of that can still be dormant under the lavender will probably surprise you. So if you can prune back some of the lavender, I know lavender doesn't like a hard prune, but if you can successfully prune back some, I would imagine you might be surprised by the amount of mint that has survived the process. But if that doesn't work, I would suggest maybe finding another spot in the garden, or as I have often been advised, find a pot to grow the mint in, because it can get quite aggressive in some areas and really take over, popping up in ways that you didn't expect. So that must be some really happy lavender, and I congratulate you on that. Anything else, Joan?
Yes.
Okay.
I recently moved into a home with a large backyard and am learning what works where, etc. We have horrible rock clay soil. I put in raised beds, had soil delivered, planted veggies. I am an experienced gardener, but the first time that I have experienced seed germinating and plants stunted all over. I am a new active composter and am having very good results. Should I add my compost over the fall? What else might I need to add to get the soil ready for better results next season?
It sounds like you're on a great path with that. Definitely let's see, what if you're planting in spring, now would be a great time to work on the soil. And yes, do the compost. If it's well composted, you can go ahead and add it as is. If it still smells, I mean, not necessarily badly, but if there's still, if you haven't gotten to the point of that earthy smell, then let it percolate a little bit longer. You can put down, trying to think, if the compost is ready, you can go ahead and put that in, maybe put in some topsoil on top of that and let that go for now, though I would put cardboard or something on top of it to prevent the seeds going, unless you do a cover crop. A cover crop would be great for now, or some winter vegetables, as Mike was talking about. But it sounds like you're on the right track. I would definitely have said the raised beds. It sounds like, I'm not sure what you meant by the seeds germinating.
That was seeds not germinating and
Thought
plants
seeds
stunted.
not
Yeah.
germinating.
And
Yeah, so it's possible the it was just an off year. Sometimes things don't work out, but you can control it a little bit by having it inside, starting the seeds inside and then taking them out so that the temperature and the wind and the sun are a little bit more non-issues while the plants are germinating inside, and then plant them once they have germinated.
there it follows up with already composted and looks great.
Excellent.
That's it.
I love it. So again, this idea that why choose IPM, I get back to that idea of if there is a low energy way of doing something, that's part of sustainable gardening too, is sustaining you and your efforts and your energy. So this is kind of it. The why choose IPM, SPM is it does provide the long-term solutions. If you put a plant in a place that it can grow to its natural size and has the resources that it would normally ask for in nature, it's going to be a low maintenance plant for you. So you can see there's a wide range, but it's just, in the end, it's just easier. It eliminates unnecessary pesticides, which cause problems in their own right. So if I can, I will advocate one more time for IPM. And if you have any questions about specific problems, the Master Gardener program is a great resource. And ask your friends. That Master Gardeners are seeing all sorts of problems in neighborhoods and garden talks, and we have a collective knowledge that can work to solving problems before you get to that need for pesticides. And once again, identification is essential. This was an issue that I faced recently. Somebody asked me, how do they kill these bugs that turned out to be ladybug larvae that were doing this damage in their roses? If you don't identify the problem, you're going to be wasting your time, energy, and probably money in solving something that, again, that correlation is not causation. This is leafcutter bee damage, and it's a sign of a healthy garden. So, it's not often that we can take pride in damage, but this is definitely one of those. If you see that those little notches in your garden, it means your garden is healthy. So again, I said at the beginning that these are kind of basic steps, and this is kind of common knowledge about, oh, save water. What Californian doesn't know that? So what is the next level? That book, so I work at the library, and so I do enjoy recommending books. So the book, Teaming with Microbes, is excellent. It's a really good read. His second one, and I even put it on my memory, not as easy to read. But anyway, Teaming with Microbes is fantastic. These are two others that I recommend highly. Nature's Best Hope is a book put out by Douglas Tallamy, and it is the start of the homegrown national park movement. Just a second, I will show you the map of that. But the other book is this one written by this marine biologist woman who is just a fabulous writer. What if we get it right? Our climate is in the position that it is, not because of natural disasters or one huge incident. It's billions of small insults to nature, and it's going to take billions of small gestures by us. We can do this, and we can make change that is going to make a huge impact on where we are in the long run. So two fantastic books, but I'd like to show you, if I may, the map that goes on. So I'm going to take it off. I'm going to stop sharing and then go to a different screen real quick. And let me see, give me just a second. And almost there. Okay, so this is the Homegrown National Park. And what they're saying, what Douglas Tallamy says in this book, is that if you put all of our gardens, just the average homeowner, if you put all of our gardens together, we would have way more square mileage than all the national parks put together. And if we become the national park of homegrown native plants, we can solve we can impact our climate change issues. So let me take you in. This is California here. And it starts to show where people are, sorry, my website here. Here we go. Zooming in on our area. And you can get on here and register your garden at the same time that you're seeing others that are here. So coming down into it, that's me. So my challenge for you all is see what you can do. So I have a rather large home, and I'm able to devote an acre of it to native plants and high quality areas for wildlife. But some people just have a corner, and that's okay. Use your corner, use what you have, and we can all make a difference in it. So again, these are the books that I would recommend. And then again, what is a sustainable garden? It welcomes wildlife. It's got the appropriate plants for the conditions of that area, has what it needs to thrive, minimal harmful chemicals, healthy soil, ready for a new generation. And I would add to this, has an advocate in the gardener, because not only will you be treating your garden the way that we can, but you can talk to your neighbors and inspire others to do the same. So I would be remiss if I didn't give you some resources. So of course, most of us know about the UCIPM website. It's very user-friendly and has a wealth of knowledge. This is the Our Water, Our World organization. This is a sample of their fact sheets, and it will give you all manner of ideas on how to handle it and resources that might be helpful. They are also the ones that come up with the 10 most wanted bugs list. These are the good bugs that you really want. And so a great resource that is common through the Master Gardener program. The river friendly, bay friendly, if you just Google them, you'll find all sorts of great resources there. And then I just want to say thank you for your time. And maybe if I stop sharing, if you have questions or comments, like I said, we are a wise group. And please share what you have done, what you have found success at, and anything that might inspire all the rest of us.
There is there is someone who is looking for a plant exchange. Is there any plant exchange that I can give the lavender and get mint instead?
Ah, anybody want to jump in there? Um, I know the Solano County Master Gardeners just had their plant exchange. I don't know, does YOLO do one?
There are a number of plant sales coming up now. I think
Uh-huh.
there's one this weekend and in Woodland, and there's probably by the end of fall there will be 2 or 3 if you just watch. And so you can look on the Yolo County Master Gardener website. Solano County has one too, and they both have calendars to see, not only plant exchanges or sales, which are usually a great deal, but also there'll be talks and presentations and that kind of thing. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is for people who have questions, both Yolo County and Solano County Master Gardeners have information lines. We don't call them hotlines anymore because sometimes it takes, a day or two to answer. But you can ask your question either by leaving a voicemail or sending an email. You can walk into the office usually once a week. I don't know about Solano County. You can bring, a diseased plant in a plastic bag, or an insect you want identified. So that's a great resource for those people who have questions. And yeah.
Looks like Pat, you have a question?
Yes. Well, it's more of a comment. I had a very bad connection when I came on. And I kept fighting with it and struggling with it. And I put something in the chat, and then I realized nobody else has this problem but me. So I checked out and checked back in, and it's been okay. So I missed so much on the first half. Is there, in the website, I know you're recording this, is there a place for me to go back and listen to it?
Yes, there is. We were actually just talking about that right in the beginning. On the Yolo County Master Gardener website, because this is we often have Solano County Master Gardeners like Teresa present, but this is a Yolo County, Master Gardener project, if you will, and jointly with the Yolo County Library. But on the Yolo County Master Gardener website, there is a list of there's a list down the left side of the homepage, and I think it's presentations, and I think it's something in presentations. Sorry, okay. I can't remember. But these are usually have been posted within a week. May take 2 weeks for everybody's a volunteer, but for our webmaster to get them up. But they are there, and if you want to watch it again or watch it for the first time.
For me, it'll be for the first time, a lot of it, because it really wasn't getting
for anybody. I mean, if you just want to watch it again, but you can just click on that, and the video will come up, and you can just watch it as many times as you want.
Thank you, thank you. So for somebody else who has the same trouble I did, if nobody else is having the problem, obviously, go out and come back in.
There you go.
Nobody else mentioned it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions or comments, I'm really grateful for the time, and I encourage you all to have some fun out in your gardens.
Yeah, thank you, Teresa.
Thank you, Teresa.
Tremendous information. So anyhow, thanks for coming, everybody.